Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Drivin with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met. Today is Monday, February the 3rd. Yesterday was the Super Bowl. Who cares? I certainly don't. But this just means that we are one step closer to baseball starting. Yes. Pitchers and catchers report officially next week. We're getting there, baby. It's almost time. Which means I'm ready to talk a little bit about the final roster as the opening day approaches, as spring training is here. Talk about the minor league edition the Mets made last week, and revisit something I started talking about a few weeks ago, which is the lineup for 2020, my proposed lineup. I want to revisit that and actually double down on it on today's show. Last week I was out of town, and when I saw the Mets made an acquisition, signing Matt Adams to a minor league agreement contract with an invite to spring training. This is a depth signing, not unlike the depth signings the Mets made last year with outfielders Rajai Davis and I can't think of the other guy who never ended up sniffing the big leagues, but played in AAA all season long. Doesn't matter. Matt Adams is a depth piece, similar to Dom Smith. I think probably with a little more pop. It plays mostly first base, but has played a little bit in the outfield as well. Remember, most recently he played for the Nationals last season. He actually had a pretty good year for the Nats in part-time play. Hit over 20 home runs. So this is a nice option for the Mets to have on their bench in AAA, and can be a backup to Pete Alonso. Of course, this raises some eyebrows and question marks surrounding Dom Smith. And if I were Dom, I were reading the tea leaves, I would sort of look at this and say, man, they really are still trying to trade me. And I think that's definitely the case. I think the Mets are still looking for a trade partner for Dominic Smith. I would hate to see that happen because he's so young and controllable, and was such a fun presence in the locker room last year, and with the scooter and everything. It's just, I feel like he was a big part of the winning chemistry this team had last season. But he really does struggle to find a spot on this roster, and he's young enough, as I said before, and controllable, that he could net something in return. So it makes sense that the Mets would go out and get a backup for Dom Smith in the event they are able to make a trade. If not, no harm, no foul. Adams can be in AAA, stash him away there. If something were to happen, God forbid, to Alonso or something, you have a guy like Adams, who's played first base in the majors, who can back up Dom, etc. So good signing. I like it. I think it's smart, and there's nothing wrong with depth. Moving on from that, before I go back to the lineup, I want to talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl. And I didn't think the game was that exciting until the end. It was a lot like an NFL game, an NBA game, where you don't even need to watch the first 3 quarters of the game. It's just like it was a low scoring first half. It was a little dull. I thought the commercials were pretty much awful across the board. I didn't really love any of the commercials except for the Bill Murray Groundhog Day commercial for Jeep. That was great. The Charlie Day recurring later commercial was kind of funny too. But I thought for the most part the commercials were kind of pedestrian, a little bit lame. And I don't get the movie commercials, and I've never understood this. It's like it's a commercial for their commercial, right? Like teaser drops Wednesday. Go to the website and watch it. It's like, what, really? But anyway, forgetting about all of that, back to the game itself. And this is not an indictment of this particular game. It's just my indictment of football in general. I've made no bones about it. I'm a baseball fan. It's the only sport that I care about, that I really care about. And my rationale behind that is pretty straightforward. I don't like timed games. The last night's game is a perfect example, right? The Chiefs have the game won, but they have to go through the formality of the last minute of the game and make that stupid fourth down. I mean, talk about a completely dull conclusion. That last minute was just so stupid in last night's game. And this is why I love baseball. That's why I love baseball, because there's no clock. You're not trying to run anything out. It's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to win in the 8th inning, because you have to get those 3 outs in the 9th. And that's why I love baseball. It's why, for me, baseball is the best sport. It is the only fair sport. It's the only sport where you can't run out the clock. And I shouldn't say it that way. It's the only sport. I'd say it's the only mainstream sport where you can't run out the clock. You have to get 27 outs. That's it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the score is. Doesn't matter. There's no timeouts. It's just the purest form of entertainment for me. And I'm so glad it's going to be back soon, because I can't wait. So I wanted to throw that out there. I just, good riddance to football. I say it every year, and I mean it. Last thing I want to touch on this morning is something I talked about a few weeks back, my sort of projected 2020 lineup. And I talked at the time about the balance in the lineup, and balance particularly with lefty-righty. And at the time, I hadn't thought of it this way, but this past week I've heard a few different podcasts about the new rule changes, and I completely forgot about, not the 26th man on the bench, but I completely forgot about the 3-batter minimum rule that is in place starting in 2020, starting this season. And I think for that reason, my balanced left-right offense lineup is even better for this season, because it makes it that much harder for an opposing manager to try and use the bullpen and navigate an inning when there aren't really a clump of lefties stuck together or a clump of righties stuck together, when you've got that left-right balance that works so well. Again, I'm sticking with Nimmo leading off. I'm viewing Cespedes, assuming he's ready on the opening day roster, as the number 2 hitter. Frankly, if he's not, I would slot J.D. Davis in the 2-hole. So there's your left-right to start. Batting third, I would put Jeff McNeil. I think McNeil should be batting third. And so McNeil's a lefty, Alonso fourth, righty. Fifth, Conforto, lefty. Sixth, Ramos, righty. Seventh, Cano, lefty. Eighth, Rosario, switch. So again, looking at that lineup, you can't just go to a lefty and hope he's going to get the next 2 guys or 3 guys out, because those matchups aren't necessarily favorable. So I think, again, the importance of this left-right piece in the lineup is extremely, extremely critical for 2020. And I hope the Mets use my lineup. I really do. I sent it to Brody. I texted it to him. So we'll see. He didn't get back to me yet, but we'll see. We'll see what he thinks. Last but not least, speaking of rule changes, I just want to touch on the DH a little bit. Last week, especially, it started to make the rounds again that the DH was coming to the National League. I'm opposed to it. I really am, because I don't like American League Baseball. I think it's a little bit duller than National League Baseball in the sense of strategy, and I just don't enjoy the style of American League play, where the manager doesn't have to think about how much further he can push his pitcher, wondering that he's going to come up in the lineup. I've talked about this ad nauseum, and I just do not like the fact that a starting pitcher can stick around longer than he should if he's doing really well, because you don't have to worry about him batting in the American League. You don't have to worry about bunting. You don't have to worry about pitching around somebody to get to a pitcher in the American League. It's just a more straightforward game, and that's fine. I get it. Some people like that, and I understand that it's to eliminate injury and for pace of play reasons, which I'm not completely sold on. But consider this: how much longer does it take for a guy to walk around the bases or trot around the bases after he hits a home run versus a strikeout? When the pitcher walks back to the dugout after he strikes out. Are we really increasing the speed of the game by adding more home runs? Not saying that's the only thing a DH does, but you get the point. So that's all about the DH. I'm not a fan of it. I'd hate to see it come, but I think it's a losing battle. I think it's coming, and there's not very much that we can do to stop it. So, from the Mets standpoint, though, they're actually in pretty good shape to accommodate the designated hitter, not only with right now with Robinson Cano, but also with J.D. Davis, also with potentially with Pete Alonso. Assuming that Dom Smith is still on the roster, you could swap Alonso and Dom and have Pete be the DH and spell him on the base in the field. I mean, so there's lots of flexibility that the Mets have because of their roster right now, and that's not even talking about Cespedes, who might add another dimension to that. So I think the Mets are poised to be in good shape with the DH when it arrives, if it arrives, but more likely when. So just wanted to throw that out there for today. So that's going to wrap it up for this morning. I'll be back probably tomorrow or Wednesday with another show this week. So until then, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.